We have gotten past the busy Thanksgiving week of games between basketball and football, and you name it, everything was basically going on in Chapel Hill. We're here to talk about it on this brand new episode of the Talkin Heels podcast. The guy to my right, Mr. Jordan Falls. I'm Nick Delahanty. Jordan, busy weekend, huh?
Very busy. A lot of action packed into about 4 days.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to talk. There's so much to talk about. UNC football goes into Raleigh. They struggle mightily against NC State. A lot to break down there. Men's basketball goes into the battle for Atlantis. They come in third. They go 2-1. The women, who we had a lot of high hopes for, we're going to talk about them as well. They lose 2 out of 3 in Florida and come home as the number 24 ranked team in the country with a battle with number 1 South Carolina looming. Seems like there's a lot of different things that are going on, and right now there's a lot of uncertainty with UNC athletics. I don't know if you feel the same way, but for me, I'm just sitting here and I'm like, man, there's a lot of uncertainty.
There's a ton of uncertainty, and I don't know if 2 months ago I would have said I feel the most confident in the men's basketball team or not, but that's the one I'm feeling the most certain about coming out of this weekend. Women's basketball kind of let us down a little bit. We had high expectations for them in Estro, Florida at the Gulf Coast Showcase. And then football did what they've done the last month of the season, really, for the 3rd straight year. So a lot of different ways the program for football can go and the athletic department as a whole.
Absolutely. And let's jump right into it. Carolina goes into NC State, regular season finale. You're expecting that Carolina is going to come in and be ready to play in this one. They were not. And it goes on the coaching. It goes on the players. It's a little bit of everything. And you brought up a very good point last week in how Dave Doran, they hate North Carolina. And you were saying how Mac Brown doesn't echo that same sentiment. From a fan perspective, didn't it give you that feel of like NC State cared about this game where North Carolina was like, it really doesn't mean much to us?
110%. This game, from the opening snap, you could tell which team wanted to be on the football field and which team was like, can we get this over with? And Dave Doran said some things that post-game and Payne Willis that probably are viewed as classless and shouldn't have been said, or maybe were meant to be said behind closed doors, and that's one thing. But at least they showed some fire and energy, and they care about the rivalry. And Carolina fans love to push it off. Oh, it's not a rivalry. Oh, it's not. It is 100% a rivalry. It's just in the sense that Carolina fans love to tell State fans it's not a rivalry because it gets under their skin a little bit. And that's something that we like to do. That's part of it. But you don't want to lose 3 straight to NC State in your backyard. And 2 of those games were in the bag. And Carolina let them slip away. And this one was just a beatdown. And this one wasn't close. And Carolina cut it to maybe you felt like they could have cut it to 16 or cut it to 8 at one point. I think it was 36-20. And Carolina had the ball, and you're like, what, they scored here? Maybe. And it never happened. And I don't think Carolina completed a pass until the second quarter. State dominated time of possession. I think it was 27-9 at one point in minutes on time of possession. Just top to bottom, from the coaching staff to the players to the equipment staff. We didn't have cleats. We were slipping and sliding all over the field. It was just it didn't feel like nobody wanted to be at that game in Raleigh on Saturday night in Carolina Blue.
And it goes with the preparation of it. You know, Mac Brown continuously says that he doesn't get the guys ready, and that's why they're losing games, and you understand that. But from a perspective of it, yeah, sure. If NC State watered the field and made it a slippery slope and made it hard for North Carolina, good for them. Good for them, because Carolina obviously wasn't prepared for that. You mean to tell me you go on the road and you don't bring extra cleats in case? What happens if rain would have came out of the forecast randomly? We wouldn't have been prepared. That's a very red flag concerning issue for me. The other thing, like you mentioned, the comments that Dave Doran made in the locker room were probably not supposed to get out in the open. But there are some Carolina fans that are upset with it. I really could care less what he has to say. And I might be in the minority here, and I probably am. But honestly, you just win a rivalry game. Your team played a phenomenal game all around. you know what? You're going to say things that are going to fire up your guys, and whether you mean it or not, whatever. If Mac Brown would have said something similar, I would have expected that NC State fans would have been upset too, and I get that point. But for me, it really didn't bother me because the way you stop that is by beating them, and Carolina just didn't flat out care about that game. And you said it before the game, you were excited for it, and I was like, don't get your hopes up. And I knew you weren't getting your hopes up. You were just excited for the game.
It's a rivalry game.
Yeah, of course. You were more excited than the guys on the field. Like, that's bad.
It's a rivalry game.
It's very bad. But in general, like, I just was so disappointed with the effort that they put out. And of course, injuries happen. Every single team in the country has injuries at this point in the year. You didn't practice with pads all week? Are you kidding me? That should never have been. I'm sorry. And I had to admit that's even more embarrassing.
If you did, don't admit it. That's as bad as saying we didn't prepare for Kate Klubnik in the ACC championship game when the entire country knew that DJ had one or two bad series that they were going to give Kate a look after the previous week against South Carolina last year. It's the same thing. You don't admit it. That's coaching malpractice. And the injuries, what injuries can they not practice with pads? Elijah Huzzy, he didn't play anyway. Nate McCullum didn't play anyway. Giovanni Bingers hasn't played all year. Who Cody Pacehour, who was hurt that played in the game that couldn't practice in pads? That is a situation of load management through the week or through the year. You do that before Campbell or even Virginia, not before a rivalry game.
Honestly, that felt like two people, Power Eccles and Cedric Gray. And Drake May, because let's face it, Drake May gets he's running for his life with that offensive line. There's times you watch film and the offensive linemen are looking at him. Like, why are you looking at our quarterback? You're supposed to be protecting him.
Well, look like the New York Jets offensive line out there.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna say this. I know bad offensive lines when I see one. I do, because the Jets are playing with like a 6-string line right now. The Jets line is better than Carolina's line. And that's bad.
Our offensive line is bad. And people will be like, oh, they're not that bad. They're good enough for Hampton to rush for 1,300 yards and Drake to be a top 5. The reason Drake and Hampton are in the top 5 in the country in rushing is because of Drake and Amari, and not because of the offensive line. It's just is what it is at this point. But yeah, from the top to the bottom, you don't. And Drake's in a red jersey all week in practice. He's not getting hit, so that doesn't matter for pads. I don't understand how you don't practice the week before a rivalry game without pads.
It's all right. The defense wasn't hitting him anyway, even if he had a regular jersey on. It's just it wasn't going to happen anyway. Apparently,
listen, 504 yards.
Listen, if you have a bad quarterback or you have a quarterback that's struggling, bring him to Chapel Hill. Let him face the Tar Heels defense. They become stars. Brennan Armstrong, if he could play his whole career against Carolina, would have been the number 1 overall pick. He would have put up Matt Leinart numbers if he would have played Carolina more. First of all, he should never have dominated that defense like he did. That's an embarrassment. And I'm sorry, that's an embarrassment. This guy got benched. The only reason he's starting is because they redshirted their quarterback they brought in because they didn't want to lose his year of eligibility. Like, at what point do you sit back and you're like, man, this is embarrassing? But we keep saying, oh, you know, a lot of teams would want to be 8-4. No, nobody wants to be 8-4. Not even you want to be 8-4. You were 6-0. That's pathetic.
And one of those wins over the final 6 weeks of the year was against the FCS opponent.
A JV team that you should beat. So, yay, we beat a team up that we should have beat.
500 yards of total offense to a team that averaged 330 or 322 on the year. They were 13th in the ACC, and we gave 500 yards to them. Give it like 320 in the first half. And I think State kind of took the gas off the pedal in the second half a little bit. You could tell they were just like, let's just end the game, keep the ball out of Drake's hands. But with State, Armstrong, for the last 5 weeks, their entire offense, I'm gonna butcher his name, Concepcion, or however you
Concepcion
for State, however you say his name, Concepcion, yes, that's been their offense for 5 weeks. Everybody knew that he was getting the football, and we had no answer. I would triple team him at some point, and if somebody else beats you, so be it. But don't let him beat you. And he literally was running the ball. He was in the wildcat taking snaps. He was catching the ball. He was motioning, running crossers, and they ran that one play where they had like 4 offensive linemen to the right, and then you see like Miles Murphy like try to like fall down to like get a fake injury timeout. So we're just standing out there and he don't get it, and they just ran the same play and scored a touchdown on it. I'm like, they've run that play 3 weeks in a row, and we had no idea what to do. And it goes back to preparation. And people say, oh, well, Mac is saying we weren't prepared and just protecting the players. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Because we heard after Georgia Tech in 2021 how the defensive line and the linebackers weren't. They said we didn't expect to see the backup quarterback. So at what point are the players really not prepared?
I really feel bad for Drake May. That's the one that I really have a soft spot for in this whole mess, because they single-handedly, if it's even possible, have done everything in their power to hurt that kid's draft stock. Mm-hmm. If I'm Drake May, I would be so frustrated with how this season went and at all the different things. This guy, it was a Heisman candidate at the beginning of the year. We saw it with Sam Howell, same thing. What ended up happening? Howell goes in the 5th round. Now it looks like a steal because he's playing pretty well with Washington. But if you're May, first of all, he didn't have a single passing yard till the second quarter. You know how difficult that is to do as a quarterback? That's extremely difficult. For
especially
him,
at college level.
Yeah, exactly. And he's sitting there, he's getting run all over the field. Every time he makes a play with his legs, there's a holding penalty or something else. He gets the penalty for the unnecessary roughness or personal foul and sportsmanlike, whatever it was, because he spiked the ball in frustration. Like, what more could this kid do? We said it a million times. He cannot be Superman all the time. He could save you sometimes, can't do it all the time. Tez Walker over the middle of the field. Yeah, the pass was high, goes through your hands. You got to catch that ball. Not getting any help whatsoever. And he's really the one that I think if you're an NFL scout, you're like, all right, we can't blame this kid for the fact that his team stinks. Look at Caleb Williams. His team is actually worse than Drake's, if you can imagine that. But at what point do you sit back and you like issue an apology to Drake and be like, listen, buddy, I'm sorry. You know, this didn't go well. You could have won a chip at Bama, but hey, thanks for coming to Carolina. Good luck in the draft, man.
Thanks for your 8-4 year. We appreciate it.
It's actually it's so upsetting because coming into the year and coming through the first 6 weeks of the season, we started to become believers that they could do this and they could be that team that they could get over that hump. And then it just is an utter and ugly collapse that just I don't think anybody could have even predicted. If you would have told me at the beginning of the year we were 8-4, I would have never said we were 6-0 out of the gate. Like, that's embarrassing. And something has to change, and something culture-wise has to change, because the way they came out against NC State proved that there was nobody other than like Drake May and Marion Hampton and Cedric Gray, like a couple of guys you could point out. The majority of those guys checked out. And Mac Brown even said it by saying that they're looking at the transfer portal already. You kidding me? You kidding me? You had a whole regular season game left. Worry about the game ahead of you. And if you don't want it, there's the door. Get out. The culture has to change, and it starts with the top. Mac Brown's got to either do something or retire. No middle.
Mac Brown started this whole thing back in January when complaining about the schedule. How tough the last 3 games of the regular season was. How bad the ACC did Carolina because they made us play Duke and then at Clemson, at State. And he's complaining about it in January. And then again in March or April, the spring game. And then again in July. And then again in August. We've heard it all season. And then you start 6-0 and you're saying all the right things and you're winning games. And then you get past Miami, and then before Virginia, you preach all week. Don't eat the cheese, guys. Don't eat the poisonous cheese. Well, how'd that go? And then the next week, Georgia Tech. We shouldn't be favored in this game. Nobody should be predicting us to win this game. This is a tough road game. Okay? Lost that one. Then you come home against Campbell. He didn't say anything before Duke. But then going to Clemson, tough challenge the last 2 games of the year. You know, road environment at Clemson, coming off an emotional win and a rivalry win. Lost the Clemson game. And the State game, you go out and say the transfer comment. Stop preaching this media PR stuff and coach the locker room. And that's the biggest problem I have. And even before Miami, he was talking about the rankings and things. And after Miami, and I even said then, stop talking about the rankings. It's not for the coaches. It's not for the players. It's for the fans. And you still hear him talk about it. And then even after Georgia Tech, this team's 2 drives away from being a top 5 team. No, they're not. Now you're 8-4. How many drives are you now? How many drives are we now away from being a top 5 team, Mac?
The whole entire NC State game.
A lot. I mean,
the whole entire state game alone, the Duke game that they should have lost, that they luckily were able to win, the Clemson game that they again didn't come out to play for.
What is this team's record without Drake May? He won the Duke game. He won the Duke game single-handedly.
Okay, I don't want to be disrespectful to Connor Harrell. I don't. I'm not saying anything against Connor because we haven't seen a big enough sample size from him, and it would be unfair to blame it on the drop in quarterback. This team probably wins 2 games.
Yep. If you
it's not against Connor again. It's against the defense. It's
just take an ACC average level quarterback.
Yeah, you're 2 wins.
And you got 2 or 3. Yeah. You're not 8 wins. Last year's team doesn't win 9 games.
No. Not a chance. No, not a chance.
Drake single-handedly has carried this team for 2 years.
He got a lot of help from Hampton this year.
I'm going to use the word that I've used on social media that a lot of people hate. Do you think that Carolina's wasted Sam and Drake?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, they've wasted the 2 best quarterbacks to go through the program. And it's a sad reality to talk about and to think about, but Sam Howell years, they couldn't even protect that guy. The line, and it's actually kind of pathetic that half of that line is in the NFL right now because that line as a whole was atrocious. They might even be worse than this line that Drake's dealing with. But then you look at Drake and all the hype and, oh, we're almost a top 10 team. No, you're not, Mac. No, you're not. Maybe if the culture was better, and that's a big word that we've been hearing, the difference between like an NC State and Carolina. If the culture was better, your guys wouldn't be running out the door. They wouldn't have their bags checked because things aren't going the right way. Yeah, you're going to have guys leave that might not play because of injury or might be stuck on the depth chart like a Boaz behind Drake May. Like, obviously, you expect guys like that to go and transfer and try to play. Good for them. Like, you hope that they get a chance elsewhere. But when you're losing guys like Kamari Morales and Elijah Green, who are quality college football players, something seems to be a little bit wrong with the culture. And it didn't even take 24 hours for Morales to say, you know what, guys, I'm out of here. See ya. Like, there's something's got to give here.
Part of the lack of playing time, you talk about all this depth and you don't play nobody. And Hampton has been phenomenal. And there's no knock on Hampton. But we could have got Green 20, 25, 30 snaps on the year, 50, somewhere there, like 5, 10 snaps a game. I don't think he played in more than 4 games all year. I mean, why? And he was great last year in 2022. I don't think he's did anything to lose that unless he did something in practice that we don't know about. But as far as game action, he earned his playing time. And I mean, would you rather have 1 1,300-yard back or 2 600-yard backs and keep them fresh?
I mean, I'll take the Hampton monster year because I kind of called it at the beginning of the year. I'll pat myself on the back there. In all seriousness, is he really that much worse than British Brooks? Like, nothing against British Brooks either. But British Brooks is getting the majority of the second back snaps. You mean to tell me that Green couldn't get some of those carries or get in there in passing situations? Yeah. Come on, there's no way. The guy was their best rusher the year before, other than Drake May, obviously. And then he just falls down the depth chart. He didn't get bad overnight.
No.
So I don't get that whole thing either. And I think that they did Green dirty because Green is a great example of the university. Like he does all those student athlete conferences and all that. And like, he's just a guy that you want around your program. And I think that, you know what, he deserved the better shake there.
Put him on special teams. We need a kickoff returner. Put him somewhere. I mean, you can find a spot for him to go back to Drake and Sam. 38 and 26 with those 2
That's bad. That is bad.
one bowl win over Temple. And then the fall off. We've talked about it last week. We can talk about it again because of another loss in November. It's just the fall off in November after November 1st just continues. It drops to 9-13 since Mac returned, and 40.9% winning percentage against FBS opponents.
I think the worst thing is that, and I don't want to say that they're turning a blind eye to it because that would be unfair. I'm not at the school. I'm not, there on a day-to-day basis. But less than 24 hours after that loss, they're sending out emails about tickets.
Read the room.
Yeah, like, okay, listen, sign me up for tickets in September when they win games, but anything after November 1st, screw it, I ain't going. You're out of your mind. They can't win in November. It's like the season ends October 31st. Like, no more winning in Chapel Hill. That's it. Basketball season.
Yeah. And they got lucky in the Duke win this year.
They did. They really did. And I'll be the first one to tell you that. The refereeing, again, played a big role in it. We weren't happy with the Clemson refs. Duke fans must be pissed about that game against Carolina, especially what we know now, how that's Mike Elko's last game against the Tar Heels as the Duke head coach. Like, if I was them, I'd be mad too. The ACC officiating has been very suspect at best.
Yeah. So now we go into year 6, or we're heading into year 6 of Matt Brown. And you got some fans saying, oh, change doesn't happen overnight. Or we need just a little bit more time. So you're probably not firing a guy that's 8-4 at Carolina. But does he retire? Does he step into more of an administrative leadership role? Does he have another year? Because this year felt a lot like 2016 to me. And next year feels a lot like 2017 looking at it with the talent coming back.
So I'm not one to call for somebody's job. I'm not. I'm not here to bash Mac Brown because I do love Mac Brown. I have no problems with him as a person, as a coach. I think that he's done a phenomenal job since coming back and getting us back on track. However, there is a time where change is needed. And Carolina is unfortunately at that point. And Mac Brown still has a lot in the tank in his mind, and he still wants it. He still recruits well. But you could just see the glaring difference between him and what we've seen from our opponents. And Carolina needs a younger leader at this point. With the NIL, with the changing game, with the different schemes and styles, they need somebody who's going to meet the times. And it's, again, no knock on Mac, but Father Time gets everybody. I don't think he retires. I think he comes back because I do think that he still loves it and he wants to coach. And again, am I going to be like banging down the walls and trying to light a pitchfork to try to get him out of there? No. If he decides to stay and he thinks it's best for the program, I'll support it, obviously, because, again, I have faith in Mac, and I think that he can make the adjustments. But if he stays, I want to see some changes. I want to see some coaching staff changes. I want to see some adjustments made in culture, made in how they operate, how they recruit. These are all things that are going to dictate where the program goes from here. Do they go out and get a transfer quarterback to compete with Harrell? Do they have faith in Harrell to take the job by the horns and just say, you know what, kid, good luck. Like, it's your job. I don't know. There's so many answers that need to be made, and they all start with Mac Brown. And from what we see right now, it looks like Mac Brown is coming back.
I'm not as particularly worried about the quarterback situation as I think some fans might be, because through 5 years, Carolina's had 2 quarterbacks, and Drake, we didn't know what Drake was going to be before he stepped on the field against Florida A&M and all of last year during his first year. But the problem is the defense, and the problem has been the defense for 5 years. And it was a problem under Jay Bateman. It was a problem under Gene Chizik. It was a problem under Gene Chizik the first time in 2015 and 2016 when we allowed 100,000 yards on the ground to Baylor in the bowl game to their running back, who they didn't have a quarterback in that game. So definitely need some changes on the defensive side of the ball. And a fun fact I heard the other day was there's 133 teams in college football. Do you know who the team is as dead last in total offense?
Were they on our schedule?
No, they were not. But they played a team that was on our schedule.
Oh man, this is tough. Missouri.
The team that is dead last in total offense is Iowa.
Oh, I was close. No, I wasn't, but it's okay. Iowa was last.
Iowa is 10-2 and playing for a Big Ten championship this weekend.
Defense wins.
Defense matters. And as fun as offense is, and as fun as it is to have Drake run down the sideline or throwing dimes down the sideline to Tez Walker, defense is what matters. Offense can sell the tickets, and Larry Fedora preached it when he was here. Don't leave your seats. You might miss something. And I get that, but you look at college football, the top two quarterbacks that are going to be in the NFL draft, Caleb Williams and Drake May, are a combined 15-9, 7-5 for Caleb Williams, and 8-4 for Drake May. Neither team has a defense. If we want to win and establish that culture, we got to have a defense, and it's got to start with a defensive coordinator that understands the college football landscape, the offenses that are being ran. And look at NC State. They're 9-3. They've had all kinds of quarterback problems. They have their backup running back as a converted linebacker, I think. They have no talent on offense, and they put up 39 against us because we don't have a defense and held us to no completions in the first quarter. Defenses matter in college football, and that's where it has to start. And it starts with Matt making that decision, and him and Gene go way back and things like that. But Chiswick has been a problem for a while. And again, not trying to conquer somebody's job, but if something has to change and we want to be successful and want more than 8 wins and don't want to lose as double-digit favorites against Virginia and Georgia Tech in multiple years, you have to have a defense. And that's where it starts. Ultimately, I don't think Mac is fired nonetheless because you're not firing a coach with 8 wins. And the question then becomes, who do you get? Well, nobody knows that answer. We don't get paid the big bucks to make that decision. And everybody wants to throw out the names of Urban Meyer or Mike Elko or Jimbo Fisher, these big names, these household names. Well, look at Jimbo Fisher. He just got fired from A&M. Mike Elko is going to A&M. But if you look around college football, look at the successful coaches right now. Some of them are names that nobody had ever heard of before. And I don't know a lot of time ahead. I know Arizona's coach. I don't know his name, but they were what? He took over. They were 1-11 last year. Now look at them. They're in the top 25. Did anybody think Dallas Swinney was going to be a good coach when he got hired? Everybody was calling for his head after the West Virginia loss in the Orange Bowl, like 2 years after he got hired. And now look at him. So you don't necessarily have to go get a household name if Mac does decide to step down, or if Mac moves into a leadership role, like a CEO role that they talked about that he would do when he was hired 5 years ago. But you have to get somebody that can change the culture if that's where this program is headed. If we want to take football seriously. If you're happy with 7-5 and 8-4 every year, don't care about winning an ACC championship, then so be it. And we can just stay where we're at. But I think Mac is proven, and we should be thankful for Mac for bringing us back from where we were. The program was dead in 2018, and Mac brought it back and set the expectations high. And the reason we're upset now is because he raised the ceiling. But you can't raise the ceiling and then not meet the ceiling. And it feels like we just keep raising the bar and we're not meeting that bar. So the expectations have raised in Chapel Hill for a winning culture in football. And we keep using that word culture, but that's what it is at this point. From the top down, from coaching to special teams, defense to offense to the equipment staff. We have to take games seriously, and losing 3 straight to a rival is not it.
It is not it at all. But, as we kind of transition from one disappointing weekend fiasco to another, the UNC women's basketball program, who we're the biggest 2 fans of, they go down to Estero, Florida. They lose 2 out of 3. They lose to Kansas State, who is no joke. They did beat Iowa. And then they followed that up with a loss to Florida Gulf Coast. Now, the Tar Heels did not shoot the ball well. From 3-point range, from the free throw line, that killed them. Absolutely killed them. And it kind of seems like Courtney Banghart and her staff are still trying to mix and match how this team works the best together. Now, of course, you could say it was cold in the arena and they had hand warmers because the girls were cold. I get that. And I understand that it's an adjustment period. But in the same token, you can't go out and miss 18 of 23 pointers. That's just not feasible to win games. And now you're looking at the schedule and you got number 1 South Carolina coming in on Thursday. You're coming off 2 losses. You got UConn coming up, who, again, is not going to be an easy game. The schedule just gets tougher. And if they don't figure it out quickly, I think it really could spiral.
Yeah, the argument could be made. They could be coming home 0-3. They didn't lead that Vermont game until 1:47 to go, and lost that one. And the cold arena thing, the other team had to play in that too. So, I mean, it wasn't cold on just Carolina's end of the floor. I mean, so and they played a good team in Kansas State. I'm not. You can't really be upset about that loss as much. 2 for 20 from 3 is a little concerning, and you lose by 7 and you miss 5 free throws. I think the concerning thing that pops out to me about Kansas State is you got out rebounded by 21, and you brought in a big and Maria Gotten that is supposed to help you in those situations and be a rim protector and get those boards and getting beat on the glass by 21 is a little concerning. And there weren't really that more missed shots for Carolina than there were for Kansas State. And obviously, people say, "Oh, when you're making shots, there's not as many rebounds available," and that's true. But Kansas State shot 43%, Carolina shot 37%. You can't get out rebounded by 21. That is probably one of the biggest differences in that game.
And you look at it, and we talk about this quote a lot. Everything looks better when the ball goes in the basket, and it's true. They did not get anything going offensively all weekend. Deja Kelly had a great tournament. Free throws aside, obviously, she's their leading scorer. She does whatever they need for her to do to win the game. She had a great final game in the tournament. I think she had 24. She was the game high. Maria Gotten finally came to her own. She had 22. But other than them in that last game, Tar Heels didn't get much. India Navarre, I believe, had 8 off the bench. But everybody else was 4 points, 3 points. Kayla McPherson only had 1. She was in foul trouble. The storyline around Alyssa Usby continues to be her foul trouble situation. She can't stay on the floor. She picked up 2 early fouls in both games. That just can't happen. They need her on the floor. And Deja's playing a lot of minutes early. And my fear is that it's going to wear her out later on in the year. We thought about at the beginning of the year, Deja and Alyssa might not have to play 35 minutes a night to win games. And early on, they've had to play a lot of minutes, and that's scary.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the missed shots, and we just threw out some numbers, but 6 of 41 from 3 in 3 games is not what you want to see. And I think the biggest thing, and they did a little bit less against Florida Gulf Coast. They only took 5 shots against Florida Gulf Coast. So 4 for 36 in the 2 other games, the Vermont win and the Kansas State loss. I think the concerning part there is when you're shooting threes that much and they're not dropping, don't keep shooting them. Try to get a closer shot or get to the rim, draw some fouls, get to the free throw line. And it seemed like they learned a little bit from their mistake the first 2 days with the Florida Gulf Coast game, only attempting 5 of them. But then against Florida Gulf Coast, they also missed free throws. They missed 9 free throws, and you lose by a point. So meanwhile, Florida Gulf Coast goes 10 of 13 from the line, and that's the difference. Carolina shot 29 free throws to Florida Gulf Coast's 13, and you lost by a point because you didn't make them. And it comes back to shooting. And if it was the arena, we'll find out on Thursday night because they will not be able to find. If you miss shots against South Carolina, you will get beat. I said it a few weeks ago. I think South Carolina might be better this year than they were last year, and they have proven that so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to wonder, too, what's going on with Courtney Banghart's rotation. And, of course, she gets paid the big bucks. I'm not questioning how she operates with the rotation. She knows her players better than anybody and her staff as well. But it's kind of concerning that Renaya Kelly starts the year in the starting lineup and she doesn't check until nearly halftime in the Florida Gulf Coast game. Paulina Paris, who made a start and was playing really well at the beginning of the year, barely got off the bench in the final 2 games of the tournament. It's just a little concerning. And yes, Kayla McPherson's back and she's been productive and they've been riding with her. But it kind of seems like a couple of these players are getting lost in the shuffle. And for long-term purposes, I think that's a bad thing.
Are you questioning the coach you're going to run through a wall for?
I just said, I just told you she gets paid the big bucks. I'm just curious as a fan. I'm just curious as a fan why hey, listen, I'm the president of the Paulina Paris fan club, so I gotta ask why PA getting her burn there. But yes, I'm not questioning her. I'm wondering why that is. Is that matchups? Is that obviously I'm not a college coach, so for me, I could speculate, but I'm interested to see how it plays out because I think that they have a lot of depth. India Navarre as well. Like there are some games where she doesn't play much, and then she comes in, she's a big factor. Like I don't know if roles are defined yet. Is what I'm trying to say.
So I'm a preface this with I didn't get to see much of any of the games this weekend, so I'm looking at the box score from each game. So I just mentioned the free throw numbers from the Florida Gulf Coast game from Vermont. They were 12 and 26, so 46%.
Terrible.
Missed 14 free throws against Vermont in a close game. You very likely could be coming home 2-1, and you feel totally different about going in the South Carolina game if you win both of those games just by making free throws and forget the 3-pointers. You combine the 3-pointers with the free throws, and now you're coming home and you're 1-2 and going to South Carolina, and you're like, oh, well, this could start spiraling very quickly. So Meanwhile, the guys go 2-1, and you feel pretty good coming home. So it changes. It just coming home with 2 wins instead of 1, and you can totally change your mindset from these Thanksgiving tournaments.
Absolutely. And if you're the boys, as we transition into them a little bit, they could have really folded after the Villanova overtime loss. And yes, they got dominated by Eric Dixon. One player really killed them in that game. You lose Cormac Ryan at the end of that one to an ankle injury. You don't know what his timetable is. You're coming off that loss where, RJ Davis played 41 minutes. You had guys who had to play a lot of minutes that, you really wouldn't want to see play a lot of minutes in a Thanksgiving tournament after playing a game the day before. But they responded very nicely in that Arkansas game.
Last year's team, in my opinion, would have folded, like you said, against Arkansas. And we saw it in Portland when they lost the close game to Iowa State and then folded against Alabama in another close game. But it's a game they probably should have won and toughened up. This team, it felt like they struggled in the first half in all 3 games. You trailed to Northern Iowa at the half, and again, I pretty much taken the mindset of I'm just not looking at social media during the first half or pretty much none of the game for Carolina basketball early in the season, because at this point everybody's like, "Oh my God, Hubert's not subbing," or "Why is he playing?" And I think he's doing fine. I like the rotation. The only complaint I have for the weekend was Harrison Ingram played 40 minutes against Arkansas, but he deserved it. He played well, and with Cormac Ryan not available, you kind of feel like you had to play him. But Northern Iowa, you just missed it for the girls. Everything was better when the ball was in the basket, and it was not dropping in the first half. But they come out on fire. They didn't get down. Played defense, intensity. They forced Northern Iowa into 17 turnovers for the game. They trailed on the rebounding battle 18-12 in that game, and then came back and won it by 3. They were 27 of 37 at the free throw line. That's phenomenal. Almost 50% from 3. And the second half showed that they doubled up Northern Iowa in the second half, and they took that momentum in Villanova in a game that they could have won. And last year's team wouldn't have been close to that. But you had 3 guys foul out, and you needed 1 guy to go for 30 plus, and you lose by 2 in overtime.
I'll take it.
No complaints there at all. And let's mention Armando Bacot had 3 terrible games this week. And last year, if he had pick any stretch of 3 bad games, and Carolina loses all 3, and Carolina's coming home 2-1, I think it kind of shows you where this team is as far as depth and talent. Harrison Ingram was probably one of the most impressive players coming out of this weekend, where he could kind of run the point forward a little bit. He found Seth Trimble in the corner, another player that made some big plays against Arkansas. And it was just I feel very confident with this team. I'm not saying they're going undefeated the rest of the way, and they have a very tough stretch coming up that we will talk about. But this team has a lot of potential. You can see it based off this weekend.
As somebody who has to be on social media during the games, I just want to say one thing to the lovely fan base, and I'm going to catch my breath before I get into this rant. Please stop with the fire Hubert Davis tweets. Please, because let's put 2 and 2 together here, okay? Hubert Davis constructed this roster. Hubert Davis brought in these transfers to fill the voids left by the guys who left, other than Dontre Styles and arguably Caleb Love because he's playing decent for Arizona, who's a top 5 team. The other transfers have done nothing. So, really, what did you lose? You bring in a Harrison Ingram, who I absolutely love. Absolutely amazing athlete, basketball player. Cormac Ryan brings that fire, that guy that they didn't have last year. You look at Jalen Withers, who has really come into his own, and he's starting to play better, and he's into the starting lineup, and they're using him in different spots, and you could see the talents there. Paxton Wojcik, the shots haven't been falling, but if I was a betting man, I would say some point they're going to start to fall. It's just a matter of time. Armando Bacot had averaged 9 points a game in the tournament, and we went 2-1. Like Jordan said earlier, if that was last year, we would have been 0-3. Stop blaming Hubert. Hubert is finally doing everything that everybody wants. He's subbing. He's using different lineups. They're creative with out of timeouts. He's letting Elliot Cadeau do his thing and facilitate. There are no complaints on my end from Hubert Davis right now. And there shouldn't be from anybody else because he has stepped up to the occasion and he has gotten better. And he says it all the time. He's still learning on the job. This guy was never a head coach, but now he's starting to get there. And this team has a lot of potential and a lot of talent. And you just have to like what you see from this team, even though they went 2-1 this weekend and they didn't obviously win the tournament. You got to like it because they were in it. They were competitive. They didn't back down. All signs that we didn't see from last year's squad. So it's an improvement. And this next stretch of games that we're going to talk about that Jordan alluded to, they're going to be telling. They're going to be very telling. But I do think this team is up for the challenge. I think they're going to rise to the occasion because that's just what they make you feel. The way they are, their demeanor, how they are with each other. It's not just a one-man show, and that's a beautiful thing.
100%. And you look at the Villanova game, and everyone will point to, Dixon had 35 or however many he had. I'm okay with that. If a team has multiple options, and Villanova does, don't let more than one guy beat you. A good example is Duke a few years ago. They had Ben Caro, and it was stop him, or he can have as many as he wants. But as long as the rest of the team doesn't have 10 here, 15 here, then you're fine. If Becerra has 25 or 30, and nobody else got more than 8 or 7, fine. Same thing here. If we don't feel like we can stop multiple guys and multiple talents, let the one guy get their 30 and just shut down everybody else. And Carolina did a relatively good job of that. It was in the game. They were called for 8 more fouls, and Villanova shot 13 more free throws, and Villanova won by 2 in overtime. Which, by the way, you talk about Hubert Davis. How about that play call for Cormac Ryan on the 3 in the corner? That was a beautiful call. And to the average fan, they're like, oh, that's just a freestyle play. That was a design play, and it was absolutely beautiful. And some people don't pick stuff up like that, but against Villanova, 13 assists on 28 made baskets. They're sharing the basketball. They're getting people involved. Harrison Ingram, you see him one place backing down the post and taking his man one-on-one. Then the next play, he's backing down the post and finding Trimble in the corner. And getting people involved. It's made it very tough for people to defend because you either guard Ingram one-on-one and he's going to back you down, or you have to help off of RJ Davis, Elliot Cadeau, Cormac Ryan. And Cormac Ryan obviously got hurt at the end of the Villanova game. The fire that he brings, he was in the huddle against Arkansas, like screaming at the guys. And Hubert even said he was so emotional when he couldn't go against Arkansas. if this team last year lost a key player, take out the Baycott situation. If a key player, if R.J. Davis or Caleb Love missed the game last year, they had no chance to win the game. And this team just beat Arkansas by 15 without Cormac and without Baycott having a good game. So the talent on this team is astronomical different from last year. And the free throws swung in Carolina's favor against Arkansas, opposite of what they were against Villanova. They shot 35 of Arkansas's 20. They still hit 25 of those. They out-rebounded the Hogs on the board by 11. And they still had 11 assists on 28 made baskets again. So I don't have a lot of complaints come out of the weekend and just a lot of positives.
Yeah, a lot of positives. And there's one thing about Eric Dixon that Tar Heel fans just are oblivious to. They see his 10 points per game average, and they're like, oh my goodness, we let this guy torch us. Number one, he had a career day. He had a phenomenal day. You can't take nothing away from that kid. He did everything he could. He made jump shots. He made shots in the paint. Number two, how many bigs are going to be a mismatch nightmare like that for Armando Baycott? Not many. You could probably name them on your hand. Baycott's not equipped to go out to the perimeter and guard a guy. And that's what Dixon was doing. And that's what Villanova was challenging him to do. Kudos to them. They got the job done. Then they tried to do it with Jalen Washington. And what did they do? They bullied him in the post. Why? Jalen's smaller. Not in terms of height, but in terms of body weight. Like, they knew where to go. And again, if you start doubling him, what happens if they start making threes and they start going crazy from behind the arc? Then you're in another problem. So, again, all positivity from this weekend, and it's very good to see that they were able to perform the way they did it. I think if you would have lost to Villanova the last game instead of the middle game, it would have been a little bit different. But coming back, beating a top 25 team and really, controlling the game in the second half, I was encouraged.
100%. And let's give credit to Dixon, too. I mean, the guys on our team get scholarships and they play too. And he made some tough shots. I mean, it's not just Carolina's guys. Like, our team, is their job to score and make plays too. And,
it is? I didn't know that.
And the same thing against Arkansas. Everybody's important to Tremont Mark, and it sounds like he's okay and doing all right. He tweeted after the game, after the scary incident there at the end. He was 10 of 10 at one point, and Trimble got tasked with the opportunity of guarding him. And I think that is a position that Cormac Ryan probably at least rotates a little bit there. But Trimble was in Mark's face a lot, and the kid just made some tough shots. And yeah, you look at the box score and you see 13 of 17, 34 points. But again, same thing as not letting one guy beat you. Nobody else only one other guy had 11. And Arkansas, you take Mark out of the equation, Arkansas's shooting percentage drops from like 47% to like 32. So I have no problem. Dixon made some tough shots. Mark made some tough shots. Everybody wants to point, why didn't Hubert go zone against Villanova? Villanova's a good three-point shooting team.
Yeah.
And then everybody will be like, oh my God, everybody's having a great three-point shooting day against Carolina. Well, you give up the two to protect the three in that situation. If they were not a good three-point shooting team, then yeah, you probably go zone to try to limit Dixon. But I had no problem with the coaching, with none of the adjustments. They tried to double their late against Dixon and against Mark, but both teams knew it was coming, and they did a good job of getting the ball out quick to avoid the double. So I'm fine with the weekend and 2-1 performance. Now you come home and number 10 Tennessee awaits in the Smith Center Wednesday night.
Absolutely. And 4 of the next 5 games are against top 25 opponents for the men's team. And the only game that's not is a conference game against Florida State. Again, that's going to be a good one. That Florida State's no joke. They're receiving votes in the poll. This is a stretch that really is going to define the season, in my opinion, before we even get into ACC play.
100%. And we feel good right now coming out 2-1. You got 5 games against number 10 Tennessee at home. You get Florida State at home in a conference game. And you got 3 neutral games against currently number 4 UConn, number 12 Kentucky, and number 25 Oklahoma. Obviously, those could change as far as rankings go between now and those games are played. Kentucky has big matchups with Miami coming up. But I think the next 5 games really, like you said, define the season and how you feel about this team. If they go 0-5 in this stretch, then it's a whole different. We're having a whole different conversation, and I don't think they will. And especially with 2 of those games being home games, I feel like Smith Center should be in a good atmosphere on Wednesday night, and then obviously Saturday conference game, which should be a good one. But I think if you come out of this thing 3-2 or better, you're feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. First of all, the only game you have to I'm going to sound terrible here, but the only game they have to win in this stretch is UConn because I'll be there. And then Tennessee because you'll be there. So if they win those 2 games, it's cool. No, it's whatever. The rest is whatever. It's what it is.
I'll be at Kentucky too, and Kentucky. Gotta win those 3.
Okay, gotta win those 3.
Those 3.
I'm not going to Madison Square Garden at 9:00 at night, crossing the border of New Jersey to go to New York to watch the Tar Heels lose. It will not happen. I will go on the court and I will stop UConn myself if I have to. But regardless, no, I agree with you. I think if you go 3-2, you got to be really happy with where you are. That's a tough slate. You got to get a couple of those top 25 wins to help with the net, obviously. But right now, you got to feel good where they are. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll see if that stays the same.
Who do you think the 2 losses will come to? Or do you think they'll be better than 3-2?
All right, so I think Tennessee they're going to win. I think being at home, a home game, I think the Smith Center is going to be rocking. Tennessee's coming off those 2 losses to the top 2 teams in the country. Who knows how they respond after that? I think they win that game. Florida State's a must-win in my eyes. Conference game, set the tone early in the conference and just get that going. I do think they beat Oklahoma. I do. I think Kentucky and UConn are the 2 where I'm a little iffy, especially, I think UConn's a very good team, and Kentucky with all the talent that Calipari has, that game could go either way, especially on a neutral. That's a neutral site, right? No, that's
No, Kentucky's in Atlanta.
No, that's right. Okay, yeah, I get confused with all these tournaments. So yeah, I think that if either game swings, it's going to be Kentucky and UConn there.
I agree with you for the most part. I think 4-1 is more realistic than 3-2, but I think you have to be happy with 3-2. But I do think Tennessee Wednesday night will be tough. They look really good against Purdue, in my opinion. Purdue shot 1 million more free throws than they did and snuck out a win. But Tennessee was close. It was kind of similar to our Villanova game, I felt like. And then Kansas beat them pretty handily. But I do think Carolina Smith Center, it's a whiteout. So I think the atmosphere will be lively. It's a 7:00 game, not a 9:00 game, which usually helps the Smith Center crowd most nights. So first ACC, SEC Challenge rendition. So I think they beat Tennessee. And then Florida State, ACC game. Florida State has looked good at times against their win against Colorado, and they look bad at times with their loss to Florida. I feel like that's a must-win. So, like you said, set the tone. The UConn game is the game I think they lose. I think.
Thanks a lot. I'm going to be there. Thanks a lot, Jordan.
Sorry. But you're UConn. You're closer, and Carolina fans will show up in Madison Square Garden. They did last year for Ohio State.
That was a great game. I was there.
I have no doubt they'll show up again. So as far as the atmosphere, it should be a good one. But UConn is talented. They're defending national champs. They bring a lot of guys back from that team and brought in some really good transfers. Kentucky's a toss-up because Kentucky always plays Carolina really tough. They always have, no matter how good or how bad they are. It's kind of like Carolina Duke in a sense where throw the records out the window and the rankings, and it doesn't matter. These 2 teams are in a battle. And, I mean, you remember the Vegas game in 2016 where it was 103 to 100, and then the same year they matched up in the tournament, and Luke May shot. And so that game's in Atlanta. That's in Kentucky country a little bit. Carolina has a lot of fans in Atlanta too, but that'll be a great atmosphere. But neutral site, I think Carolina beats Kentucky. Kentucky did not look good last week against a mid-major. I'm gonna predict 4-1 in this stretch because I think Oklahoma's a must-win. And I think 4-1 or better, 3-2 or better, you feel good. 4-1 or better, we're feeling really good.
Absolutely,
we don't want to talk about 5-0, but Maybe next week or the week after we can start talking about it.
The last time we talked about undefeated record in a certain stretch, it was football, and that didn't go too well.
That didn't go.
Let's just wrap it up there. That's it. That's all for the show tonight. That's it. We're done. That's another episode of Talking Heels. We're not going to talk about unbeaten. Carolina needs to go at least 4-1 in this stretch. That guy is Jordan Fools. That guy's optimistic. I'm going to say 3-2 or better, and we'll be happy. Of course, I'm Nick Delahanty, and this is another episode of the Talking Heels podcast. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, however you want to listen to your podcast. It's there available for you. Until next time, go Heels. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Go Heels, white out Wednesday night.